I am June Hartley, 36 years old. I used to believe that if I stayed quiet and useful enough, they would eventually keep a place for me. But then my name was crossed out in black ink on the brand documents, not erased, just overwritten. Don't make a mess over a name someone said without looking at me. And I understood sometimes the only way to hold on to yourself is to stop letting anyone else hold you back. It's strange how silence can arrive before the noise even leaves. I opened the email the way it always did, with one hand resting on the rim of a chipped mug and the other already reaching for the delete key. Most of what my mother sends is bulk lists, attachments, forwards from her church group. But the subject line that morning stopped me: holiday coordination. Final. No edits. I didn't flinch. I clicked. The PDF loaded slowly. She still uses serif fonts and gold headers like it's 96. The itinerary was meticulous. Friday arrivals, Saturday, brunch, Sunday, family portraits at Ashburn Hall, guest list in alphabetical order, budget allocations, seating plan. I looked for my name under cousin's table, then singles overflow, then just scanned for any J. There wasn't one. I refreshed the page once, then again. Still nothing. My name, June Hartley, wasn't there. Not even in the footnotes. Not even as a +1. I checked the text thread next. It used to be called Hartley Holiday, now it was renamed the Lairds. Full branch. My number had been removed. I scrolled up out of habit, but there was no history left. Just the cold grey notification: you were removed from this conversation. I didn't want to call. I did anyway. The line clicked, and her voice answered, brisk and buttoned up. June, if this is about the email, don't. I just saw the list. There's nothing wrong with it. We had to make it manageable this year. I'm not in it. She paused for less than a second. Then maybe it's just time you took a year off. We all agreed you could use the space. Don't make this difficult. I didn't reply. She filled the silence. You know how you get when you're around too long. The call ended itself. Or maybe I did. I'm not sure. I sat there with the phone in my hand and the cursor blinking on the PDF as if waiting for an edit that would never come. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink for a while. The mug in my hand had gone cold without me noticing. It still held the faint smell of peppermint, though the taste had dulled. The mug was from the set I brought back from Asheville 5 years ago. Handmade, greenish glaze, slightly uneven rim. There used to be 4, 1 each for Mom, Madison and me, plus a spare for guests. When I moved out last spring, I only took 1. I thought it would make a nice gesture leaving the rest. I suppose that's been returned now, too. I opened my laptop again, rechecked the attachments. There were diagrams for the table layout, including name tags and centerpiece assignments. Under Lemon Place cards, Madison was listed as the coordinator. My name never appeared, not even as TBD. A single footnote read, "Final version locked. No further edits will be accepted after Nov 20th. Today was November 21st. I closed the document and looked at the corner of the screen. A notification had popped up, Facebook memory from 7 years ago. A picture of me holding the Christmas wreath we made from foraged pine and ribbon. Madison stood behind me, arms folded, pretending it was her idea. Mom had captioned it, "My girls." June's such a helper. Helper. I opened the cabinet and pulled out the small box of decorations I hadn't touched since last December. Inside was a bundle of wire lights, tangled and unlit. The same kind I used to string around Mom's living room, 1 bulb at a time, testing each one with a steady hand, while Madison took photos. "Just don't overdo it again this year," she once said, not unkindly, just bored. In the bottom of the box under the lights was a folded napkin faint cranberry stain, still visible, embroidered with a gold J. Madison had made one for everyone the year Eleanor started the elevated dinner experience. Mine had been the only one hand-sewn. I'd found it balled up behind the sideboard after dinner and brought it home. I smoothed it out on the counter. I didn't know why. That afternoon, Madison's name showed up in my inbox. The subject line was blank. The message was short. Mom's tired of the disruptions. Let things settle. Disruptions. I stared at the word for longer than I should have, as if saying nothing had somehow become the loudest crime. I opened the closet and pulled out the coat I wore last Christmas. It still had the ticket stub from the midnight train I took to get to the dinner on time. No one had waited for me. When I arrived, they were already slicing the pie. Mom looked up and said, "You should have texted. We weren't sure you were serious about coming." I had nodded and taken my seat at the folding chair, the one at the corner. I held the coat for a while. Then I folded it and put it back. Later that evening, I made tea in the chipped mug, not peppermint this time, just plain black. I didn't read any more messages. I didn't try to write back. I didn't ask for space or inclusion or revision. I didn't edit the memory to make it softer. I sat at the kitchen table, uninvited, unnoticed, and unmoved. And I let it be final. I used to think grace was something you practiced until it became quiet enough to pass for peace. After my father died, I moved back to Portland before anyone asked. I packed my studio apartment into 3 cardboard boxes and a laundry basket and left a note with my landlord saying I wouldn't need the deposit. I didn't tell anyone at the time. Madison had been struggling to balance her contract job and the renovation schedule at Mom's house. I thought I could fill in, just until things leveled out. No one marked the day I arrived. The spare room hadn't been cleaned. I remember folding back the guest sheets and finding a dried tea bag flattened between the pillows. I washed them twice, didn't mention it. For a while I rearranged myself around their routines. Grocery runs, utility bills, picking up Madison's dry cleaning, even though she swore she could do it herself. I labeled leftovers in the fridge. I ironed Mom's dresses before church. I didn't ask for anything back, not even thanks, just space enough not to be in the way. Sometimes, Madison would drop a grocery list on the kitchen counter without looking up. Once she paused long enough to ask if I was still doing that little sewing thing. I nodded. "Cute," she said. Then she added oat milk to the list. I never told her that boutique sales had been steady for 18 months by then. I never showed her the first magazine that featured my spring line. It felt easier to let them think I was soft-trying. The calendar in my room still has everyone's birthdays circled in blue ink. Madison's in May, Mom's in September, even Uncle Don's. Mine is left blank. I don't think I ever added it. Not once in 6 years. That first December back, I stitched a dozen hand warmers for the family stocking line. Neutral linen hand-stamped with pine trees. Mom didn't notice they were handmade until a neighbor complimented them. "I think Madison ordered them online," she said. I didn't correct her. Madison once borrowed $600 to cover a security deposit she claimed was caught in limbo. She texted me from the airport, "Can you spot me? Just until Monday." I transferred the money that evening. Monday passed. She never brought it up again. The following year, she bought Mom a bracelet for Christmas and told everyone, "We really pulled it off, huh?" No one asked what I contributed. When the boutique lease was finalized, I sent an email to Madison. The subject line was, "Thinking Together." It was short. I'd drafted it several times before deleting most of it. Just 2 paragraphs, an invitation to co-develop a capsule collection, a way to build something jointly again from different ends of the same thread. The message was marked unread for 5 months, then quietly archived. No reply, not even a maybe. Last summer, she hosted a launch party for her new wellness line, rebranded from her lifestyle blog. I was there early to help arrange the catering trays. She introduced me to her investor as my sister. She does fabric work, I think. The man nodded, asked if I could help find a better tablecloth for the sponsor booth. Mom once gave me a small silver pin shaped like a teardrop when I was 7. She said it was from her own mother, and to keep it safe. I still have it. It lives in the wooden jewelry box on my nightstand, tucked behind a broken locket and a pair of unused cufflinks. The pin has a faint scratch across its center, almost invisible, unless you tilt it toward the window. You hold on to little things too long, Madison told me once when she caught me rewinding an old voicemail from Dad. Some of us have to, I said. She rolled her eyes. It's not that deep. There was a dinner 2 years ago, just after I launched the first full boutique under my name. I'd spent 3 weeks building shelves by hand, sanding reclaimed pine until my wrists gave out. I invited them both to the opening. Neither came. At dinner, Mom reached for the bread and said, Madison's new yoga line is going live next month. She's building a following. I nodded. She's always been good at making things happen. Madison poured herself wine, then glanced at me. You still doing the rustic thing? I think. I smiled. Or tried to. Later that night, I washed the dishes while they watched a home renovation show in the living room. The sponge smelled like lemon and something synthetic. The faucet made that high-pitched whistle it always had. I didn't ask anyone to fix it. Sometimes people treat you like background music, pleasant when quiet, obnoxious when you try to be heard. On my desk, I keep a single printout of the first product review the boutique ever received. It was written by a woman named Angela H. No profile photo, no extra words. It felt like something made by someone who didn't need to be noticed. I read it once every few weeks, not because I want recognition. I think I just wanted someone to see the work for what it was. I kept giving gifts even when none came back. I mailed birthday cards. I sent care packages. Once I left a coat at Madison's when she said she didn't have anything nice to wear to the retreat. I never saw it again. The point wasn't reciprocity. I think the point was hope. Mom once pulled me aside before a family photo. Let your sister stand in the middle. It's just easier for framing. I stepped aside. Madison stood in the center, her necklace catching light from the window. I don't think anyone ever saw that I wasn't in half the album. It took me years to realize that being useful isn't the same as being wanted. I stayed quiet because I thought it meant I was strong, that if I just kept folding myself smaller, they would see how much space I'd left for them. But some people don't notice what doesn't take up room, and maybe that's why it was so easy to take mine. Some absences don't announce themselves. They just settle in quietly, like dust behind glass. I found the old photo box while clearing the top shelf of my closet. A small, linen-covered cube with a ribbon tie slightly frayed at the edge where I used to run my thumb when I couldn't sleep. I don't remember packing it, but it must have come with me during one of the quieter moves. I placed it on the table and opened the lid with both hands, as if something inside might resist. The first image was a print from a disposable camera. Madison and I at the county fair, leaning against a faded fence cotton candy between us. My head was turned just slightly, caught mid-laugh. Only her smile made the frame mine had been trimmed along the edge. The next photo showed Mom holding a certificate. Her hand rested on Madison's shoulder. In the corner, I could see the tip of a silver pen mine, but the caption on the back read, Madison's Honor Society, 2002. That year I'd won the statewide essay prize. No mention, no folder, no frame. Mom used to say, we only hang things that feel timeless. She meant well. Or maybe she didn't. I stopped asking. I flipped through more birthday cakes with one-name trip photos where I was behind the lens. At first it felt like misplacement, but the pattern held. There was the family portrait from my senior year. Madison in front arms folded. Mom with her pearls. I stood near the end, slightly out of focus. I remember the photographer adjusting his lens, asking someone to shift left. I did. Too far, maybe? Only half my arm remained in the final print. Cropping helps the energy feel tighter, Mom had told me when I noticed. I kept the photo anyway. In one envelope, I found a holiday card draft, the kind Mom used to print and send in bulk. Typed lines, stock phrases. We're so proud of her, it read just above a scanned image of Madison standing at the front of a podium. No name, no context, just her. I remembered the year that photo was taken. Madison had done a 2-minute toast at a networking event. I'd catered it, hand-folded the gift bags, arranged the plates. When I pointed it out, Mom looked confused. Oh, you mean you were there? The email from that same season came back to me. A customer had written a long thank you, noting how the packaging felt made by hands that knew something about leaving space for others. I showed it to Madison, thinking she'd understand. The next week, a revised version of the message appeared in her press kit, with her name alone at the bottom. She shrugged when I mentioned it. What's yours is kind of mine, right? That's how we've always done it. I didn't answer. She didn't wait for one. I turned over the next print. Graduation day. The sky a dull grey. Rows of students in identical robes. In the foreground, Madison adjusting her cap. I wasn't in the frame. I hadn't been in many frames that day. Mom told me she'd left the camera in the car. By the time she retrieved it, the moment had passed. There were too many people anyway. Your sister was easier to spot. I flipped the photo upside down. There was a keychain I had made years before, tucked inside the box beneath the prints. Small, brass-toned hand-stamped with June in uneven lettering. I'd made it during a summer trip to the Crater Lake. I remembered choosing the font, holding the stamp with shaking fingers, pressing too hard on the U. It had left a dent near the edge. I gave it to Mom the night we got back. She smiled, placed it on her keyring. Weeks later, it was gone. She said she must have dropped it at the salon. I told them not to give me cheap things. Maybe next time, pick something useful. I didn't bring her gifts again until the sapphire I never got to give. There was a time I tried to create a shared folder online for our family photos. I spent hours uploading scanned prints, labeling names, tagging years. I shared the link with both of them. A week later, Madison launched her own collection on a blog called Legacy Lines, watermarking the images I'd gathered. I emailed her. She responded with one line. You're too precious about things no one remembers. I stopped uploading after that. I've always believed that memory isn't about recall. It's about repetition. The photos that get framed are the ones that get seen. The names that get written are the ones people start to say. The rest fades without ever being called gone. There was a picture of Dad and me from my 5th grade play. I had kept it separate, folded in half. He was holding a bouquet that we bought at the gas station because the florist had closed. I was wearing a cardboard crown, one arm tucked under his. The back of the photo was blank. No one had thought to label that one. I put everything back into the box, not neatly, just slowly. The ribbon didn't tie as easily the second time, maybe because the corner had started to tear. I placed the box in the drawer and didn't push it all the way in. Some things are better left slightly ajar. There's a kind of grief that doesn't make noise, not because it's deep, but because it's been there so long, it's learned to keep still. I used to think being remembered meant doing more. Now, I understand it's often about being convenient to frame. Some things aren't stolen in the dark, they're taken in daylight, documented, notarized, and filed. The email came from the leasing office, a polite reminder to confirm final documentation reflecting ownership update. I reread it twice before forwarding it to the legal contact I'd worked with over the past 6 months. She called 2 hours later. There was a resubmission, she said. Same business name, same address, but a new principal. The file said Madison Laird. I opened the folder on my desktop, labeled Boutique Expansion, and clicked on the contract I'd saved under my name. The document I signed had a timestamp. I compared it to the version attached in the email. Her name was in the header. Mine had been replaced. I searched for the source of the new submission. The email address listed was nearly identical to mine, one letter swapped. A single vowel easy to miss. Almost too easy. The USB I had mailed 2 weeks earlier had left my hands with a seal. I still remembered the small dent on the cap and the faint mark of lipstick near the plug red, sharp, too deliberate to be accidental. Madison always wore that color like a coat of arms. The money trail followed next. The security deposit, wired from an account I had marked for business use, only had been transferred the night before Christmas. I hadn't logged in since the 20th. The approval tag read, Trusted Device. My devices were all accounted for. At the bottom of the confirmation email was a signature, looking forward to a beautiful collaboration. L. When I called the leasing office, the woman paused before speaking. We were under the impression it was a shared project. I didn't correct her. There didn't seem to be a point. I sent one message. Short. Direct. You changed the name on the lease. 3 dots pulsed in the corner of the screen. Then a reply. You know it only works if someone's actually visible. You're great with the behind-the-scenes stuff, but branding's about presence. I stared at the screen. She didn't use my name once. I scrolled through her social media that evening. Madison had posted a photo outside the storefront, the kind I'd taken months ago, standing just off-center, one hand resting casually on the doorframe. Her caption read, Grateful for new beginnings and old lessons. Rooted thread, the door hadn't even opened yet. I found the folder labeled Launch Materials and opened the mood board. My sketches were still there. Reclaimed wood finishes, moss green textiles. I'd selected each element by hand. One photo now appeared in her feed, cropped, tagged with her brand handle. The email to the interior designer had gone out from the fake address. It was signed again with her initials. I checked the transfer logs. The deposit had cleared without flags, no alerts, just a quiet approval from a device listed as mine. There was nothing left to contest. No glitch to blame. No misunderstanding to untangle. When I called her, the line rang twice. You're being dramatic, came the voice. I didn't remove you. I just made it make sense. I didn't respond. She exhaled sharply. You're good at the quiet stuff, June. The feel of it. But someone has to stand at the front. You know that. I didn't remember saying I agreed. She paused. The store will do better this way. That was the last line. I closed my laptop without saving anything. The screen reflected my face, faint and distorted in the black. My fingers hovered over the touchpad for a moment longer before pulling away. On my desk sat a small keychain I'd picked up during one of the vendor fairs last year. Brass, slightly tarnished. I'd planned to engrave the opening date on the back. It was still blank. I turned it over once, then left it facing down. In the hallway there was a printout of our first collaboration back when we stitched samples in my garage. Her name had been added in ink mine already typed. She always used pens with fine black tips, the kind that made edits look like part of the original. There was a silence that followed. Not in the room, but under my ribs. A weightless kind, the sort that comes not from loss, but from being overwritten. Mom called later that week. I heard you're upset. Don't let paperwork get in the way of family. I waited. She didn't elaborate. She's just better at the client-facing side. That's not personal. Then she shifted tone. June, don't be ungracious. That word stayed with me longer than the rest. I didn't remind her who sourced the supplier, who built the inventory, who registered the trademark. None of it seemed to matter. I opened the drawer beside my bed. Inside was a notepad I used to write down shipping quotes. On the top page was a list of materials: raw linen brass hooks, cedar shelving. I'd forgotten I'd made notes in pencil. I ran my thumb across the lead markings. Some lines had faded from friction. Next to it was the envelope I had prepared to give the leasing office a physical copy of the brand narrative. It began with a sentence I'd rewritten 5 times. Rooted. Thread began from the belief that quiet things hold the most weight. Her version began with, "We believe in strong women, bold voices, visible impact." Same name, different center. I returned the envelope to the drawer. There was nothing else to do. I didn't call her again. I didn't post a statement. I didn't write a clarification or issue a claim. Some removals don't need to be announced. They're made final not by notice, but by silence. Silence doesn't begin with stillness. It begins with a decision not to correct the story. I deleted my name from the shared folder first. Not out of impulse, just rhythm. 1 tab at a time. I unticked the box marked co-founder, unchecked the social tags, and replaced my headshot on the staff bio page with a placeholder. The silhouette figure looked less jarring than the version they'd cropped last month. There was a notification. An hour later, changes were reversed by admin. I made no second attempt. The coat I'd left at Mom's the winter before, wool navy, slightly faded near the collar, still hung behind the door. I'd worn it to the meeting where we signed the initial lease, the one that never made it to the final filing. I removed it from the closet and draped it over the doorknob. The sleeves looked longer than I remembered. That night, I packed in quiet. I took only what I owned outright. The scarf from the fall market, the glass pen from the fair in Salem, the ledger I used to draft my first inventory. I left behind the candle Madison gifted last Christmas, unopened. The scent label read, "Assertive Cedar." I placed it gently on the side table and didn't take it with me. Mom sent a message mid-morning. "You still have a place here if you choose to behave." I stared at the screen. Then I powered off the phone and placed it face down on the kitchen counter. The battery wasn't low. The silence wasn't charged. There had been a spreadsheet from Madison titled Ownership Clarification. Draft shared without context. I read it once. Her column read Active Management. Mine was labeled Historic Contributor. There was a note at the bottom. "We can still list you as founding support. No hard feelings." I printed the document, crossed through the entire final row in pen, and scanned it back with a single line written at the top. No clarification needed. No response came. That suited me. I walked to the bookshelf and pulled down the framed print of the boutique floor plan. The copy I'd drawn by hand had small notations near the window, east light, good for plants, and a smudged corner where I'd erased and redrawn the fitting rooms twice. I placed it in a folder marked Archive. I didn't label the outside. The group thread pinged again. New name, the Lairds, core circle. I was added back in. The message read, "Let's put this behind us. Family first." I didn't open it. I didn't remove myself again. I just turned off notifications. I went through my inbox and found the initial branding agreement, the one we never filed but alluded to when we wanted to sound unified. I forwarded it to the store's attorney with the subject, "Please dissolve any pending reference to joint language. I do not authorize shared usage of my name image or previous work. No public statement necessary. No pleasantries, no punctuation beyond the period." I folded the silver pin the one Mom gave me when I was still learning to spell independent into a small cloth. The fabric was pale and soft, a remnant from a linen test swatch. I placed the bundle inside a recycled gift box and left it at Madison's mailbox with no card. On the side of my desk was a corkboard with push pins marking supplier locations, projected expansion zones, and a red star over the boutique site downtown. I removed the star with slow fingers and didn't replace it with anything. There had been a day I showed Madison that board. "You really think this little setup can scale?" I didn't answer. She clapped once and said, "Cute." I stared at the board for a while longer, then I took it down completely. Later, a message came from her. "This isn't personal. It's just positioning. You know how this industry works. That was all. No apology, no miscalculation, just strategy." Mom followed with another. "You've always been a bit too sensitive for your own good." The words weren't loud. They just landed. I cleared out the shared calendars, removed my name from the launch dates, and left the note column empty. No last-minute edits. No digital trail of protest. The winter coat I bought with Mom during one of the quiet years still hung near the stairs. She had chosen its structured shoulders, stiff fabric lined with an unnecessary layer of synthetic fleece. I never liked how it felt, but I wore it anyway. I folded it once, placed it on the hanger, and hung it behind the front door. No tag, no note, just absence. I left a letter addressed to the boutique accountant. Simple, notarized, confirming the cancellation of any shared tax structure moving forward. Beneath the signature line, I included one sentence handwritten in ink. All future recognition should reflect current contribution, not legacy. I didn't explain who the sentence was for. On my way out, I passed the mirror in the front hallway, the one that caught only from the shoulders up. Madison used to tilt it just slightly forward so the light caught her face better. I stood still, centered myself in the glass, and adjusted nothing. Some erasures aren't public. Some don't involve shouting or slamming or declarations. Some just begin with not correcting the version they prefer and end with walking away before they finish telling it. I didn't close the door hard. I didn't pause at the threshold. I didn't look back to see who might notice. I only carried what was mine, and nothing that could be returned. I never noticed how quiet it could be when nothing echoed someone else's name for me. The walls here don't lean in with memory, they stay still. I hung the first frame without checking whether it was straight for anyone else. My father once sketched a heron black ink, wide wings, unfinished feet. I placed that one first, above the heater, slightly off-center. It didn't ask for balance, just presence. I made tea this morning, not the kind I used to stock for others, the delicate sachets and tins with names I couldn't pronounce. Just something dark without flavoring, steeped too long in hot water. I left the bag in. There was no one to say it was bitter. The mug didn't match anything else in the cupboard. speckled green with a hairline crack near the rim. I picked it from a yard sale last spring, but never used it. It felt too plain then. Now it felt right. I drank slowly, and the crack didn't spread. I opened a drawer and found a candle with no label covered in dust. I lit it and watched the scent rise, something faint, cedar, maybe. It softened the new paint smell, the kind that clings to everything like apology. I didn't mind the mix. It reminded me that this space hadn't been claimed by anyone else before me. The stack of documents from the boutique sat untouched on the counter for 2 days. I had folded the edge of the top page back and forth until the corner frayed. Today I signed them. Name change request. Ownership reassignment. Just one name. Mine. The notary didn't blink when I slid the envelope across the table at the corner mail center. She looked at the return address and nodded like it was routine. Dropping the past, huh? I didn't answer. I folded my receipt into a small square and slid it into my coat pocket. Not to keep, just to carry for a while. Madison had sent another message last night. 3 sentences. We're all still processing. You don't have to make this permanent. Family works through things. The screen stayed lit for a few seconds after I read it. Then I pressed the power button and set the phone face down. The ceramic lamp beside the bed cast a soft, irregular circle on the floor, and the silence didn't argue. I cleaned the table this morning, not to prepare it for guests, not to stage it for a meeting, not to perform tidiness, just to clear it. There were crumbs from the pastry I bought at the corner bakery and a receipt from the art supply shop. I tossed the receipt and kept the string that wrapped the pastry bag. I tied it around the wrist of a small cloth doll my niece once gave me before she started calling me the other aunt. The fabric pin I wore was new, a copper clasp shaped like a leaf mat and uneven, bought from a stall down by the river. The woman who made it didn't ask if it was a gift. She just handed it to me, wrapped in paper and twine. At noon, I opened the old notebook. The first half of the pages were tight with instructions, sketches, pricing notes, color codes. I had written them in small script, always leaving space between the lines for someone else's revision. I had never gone back to see what they added. Today I flipped to the first blank page and wrote my name across the top. Then I started the story over, not as a record, as a recounting. I began with the window in my new apartment. How it creaked when I opened it. How the sky didn't press in. How no one corrected me when I called it mine. Halfway through the page I stopped, not because I ran out of things to say, but because I didn't need to write everything at once. The words had waited long enough. They didn't demand speed, only honesty. There was a knock once. A neighbor, probably. I didn't open the door. I waited. The footsteps faded. The silence here isn't empty. It has texture. It's filled with the sound of dishes placed gently on counters, pages turned without rush floors that creak without apology. My mother used to comment on my stillness. You disappear even when you're in the room. Once I thought that was a flaw to fix, something to rise above. Now I understand it was the one part of me that stayed intact. I folded laundry without sorting it by color. The socks didn't match. The towels didn't line up. No one commented. The absence of critique is its own kind of presence. The boutique would change soon. New signage, new website, new nameplate on the door. But the bones would stay. I had built them with my hands shelving from salvaged wood counterlegs, reinforced after a winter storm. Madison hadn't known which fuse to reset the night the lights went out. She once told a customer I was mostly back office. I remember the woman glancing at me, then smiling tightly. You're lucky to have someone like her handling the boring stuff. I had nodded then. My fingers had been wrapped in a cotton bandage from fixing the storage hinge that week. She didn't see it. I no longer flinch at the memory. It lands soft and flat like mail that doesn't require response. Tonight, I'll finish the cup of tea, even if it cools too much. I'll light the last of the candle and let it burn down. I won't scrape the wax for reuse. I once thought I had to be indispensable to be irreplaceable. But now I understand some things are only seen clearly once they are removed completely. They never remembered my middle name correctly, even when it was printed right in front of them. The envelope arrived with a corner torn and the ink slightly smudged near the return address. It was my mother's handwriting, unmistakably deliberate, rounded loops for letters that didn't require them sharp angles where none belonged. My name was written as Jane Harlow, not June, not Hartley, not even a hesitation in the gesture, just wrong and sealed anyway. Inside the invitation was thick with gloss and weight. A celebration, it said, for the 25th anniversary of the Laird family boutique. Legacy through generations. I was mentioned barely in a line just above the catering sponsors. Special guest, our original visionary. No placement, no schedule. No name on the RSVP line, only a vague request. Scribbled in blue ink. It would mean a lot. Everyone agrees you should be in the photo this time. The card smelled like pressed roses and synthetic citrus. I folded it once, then again, until the ink split. Later that week, a bouquet arrived, daffodils and lilies sharp in colour, loud in contrast against the pale walls. No card. I let them sit in the sink. When I called, the answer came through Eleanor's breathless tone. Con ku koi nu loi sin loi ngum. I looked at the phone screen until it dimmed. Then I wiped the counter clean as if the call had left residue. I was walking back from the market when Marla approached me. Brown boots, grey cardigan eyes that had seen too much for her age. She used to help with shipping when the boutique still had a stockroom. Her voice was tight, like she was pulling a string behind her ribs. I thought you'd already know, she started. Madison pitched a deal with Lucero Capital. Told them you were still backing her, just not on paper. I thanked her without using the word. Just a nod and a pause. Her hand touched my elbow once before she left. That night, I searched the boutique's website. The homepage banner used an old photograph one I remembered, because the hem of my sleeve had been rolled unevenly. I could see it there, still creased, but the name beneath it wasn't mine. Founder Madison Laird. I took a screenshot and sent it to myself. The subject line read, "Quiet theft isn't silent." A few days later, a message came through the family group chat. I hadn't seen that banner in over a year. My number had been removed after the incident, though no one used that word. The message welcomed me back. No greeting, no direct mention. Just a photo of the boutique with the caption, "We're almost ready for the big shoot. All hands in." I didn't respond. No one followed up. The next morning, a voice message blinked at the top of my screen. From Madison. It was short. "They'll be doing the family portrait on Sunday. Just be on time. You'll be placed somewhere central. It makes more sense visually." No address, no discussion, no acknowledgement. I poured the message into the drain of my inbox. Later that week, a large padded envelope showed up at my door. Inside, a proof of the commemorative magazine. Glossy cover, champagne-tinted. On page 6, a composite image of the family, too symmetrical, too curated. My face had been edited in from a 10-year-old photo, the shadows not even matching the lighting of the others. I recognized the dress. It no longer fit. I placed the magazine beside the kettle face down. That night, I scrubbed the kitchen tile until the smell of bleach overtook the scent of those flowers now wilted and browning at the edges. On Saturday, the doorbell rang once, then again. I opened it. Eleanor stood with a folder in hand and an expression carved from marble. Just sign this. It's for clarity's sake. The boutique's history will read cleaner if there's unity. You understand how investors read things. I took the folder. Inside a release form, a clause noting familial likeness permitted for promotional continuity. She looked at me with practiced neutrality. You benefited from the exposure once. Let it continue. Quietly, of course. I left the folder on the bench by the door. It sat there all night. Sunday arrived. The sky was overcast, which photographers often prefer. I stayed inside. I turned off the light above the kitchen table. The switch clicked too loud in the quiet. At 11:34 a.m., a message came through from Madison. We went with someone else, but the seat was left empty. Thought that was symbolic enough. I closed the app. My phone didn't buzz again that day. In the afternoon, I opened my old file box. In it was the original business registration, where my name appeared in black ink on every line. I touched the paper like it might smudge under my fingertips, but it held. There was a photo tucked in the back. Not staged, not retouched. Just me and Nora in the early days, sitting on crates in front of a storefront that hadn't been painted yet. The windows were dusty. My hair was pulled back with a pencil. I looked younger in that photo, but not smaller. I slid the paper back into its sleeve. That night, I wrote a message to myself. You were never invited back. You were loaned out for symmetry. Then I lit a candle, not for ambiance, but for weight. The wax held steady in its slow fall. The air thickened with lavender and something faintly metallic like a memory of silver. I folded the magazine one more time and placed it at the bottom of the recycling bin. No sound followed, no knock, no apology. And for the first time I didn't rehearse a response. I let silence keep the last word. I stopped checking the mirror for approval. The small round one on my dresser has no frame, no stand, just a back, worn from sliding around too many bathroom sinks. I keep it leaned against the wall beside the cactus I planted last week. It's the kind that survives anywhere, even when you forget to water it. The woman who looks back now doesn't tilt her head. She doesn't adjust her collar or smooth the arch of her eyebrow. She just watches, still. I changed the website banner 2 nights ago, replaced the washed-out coastal beige with deep green. Not pine, not emerald, something in between. The old slogan, timeless pieces for shared moments, is gone. Now it just says, made quietly, meant to last. The first order came in this morning. A woman named Eliza wanted the stitched linen satchel. I hadn't expected anyone to notice. I remember when Madison skimmed past that design and tossed the swatch on the floor. This one doesn't photograph well. Scrap it. I wrapped it slowly, double-lined the corners, reinforced the bottom seam. I didn't rush, though my hands knew the folds by heart. I added a small card, blank on the front, handwritten on the back, for those who were once overlooked. You're seen. I didn't sign it. By noon, Eleanor called. I let it ring. Her name took up the whole screen, even in lowercase. The voicemail transcription arrived minutes later. We'd like to talk, not about the past. Just forward things. The audio icon pulsed beside it, untouched. The last time I heard her voice in person, she held a glass of ginger ale and said, "There's no benefit in playing victim when we're all trying to move on. This afternoon I wore the shoes Madison once called embarrassing. They look like you dug them out of a lost and found bin. I restitched the sole, added new laces, left the fraying leather as it was. They gripped the ground just fine. I walked to the local makers group meeting, held in the back of a bookstore, where the chairs don't match, and no one interrupts. No one asked where I was from or who I used to work with. They passed around fabric swatches and ceramic beads, and someone handed me a thermos of peppermint tea. A woman with short white hair said, "Your work reminds me of something that refuses to apologize." There was no clipboard, no name tags, just hands moving and silence when it was needed. The woman in the mirror that night didn't blink when I passed by. I didn't either. A review came in around midnight. Eliza wrote, "I chose this because it felt like it had been made by someone who knows what it's like to be set aside. It's quiet, but it speaks. I read it twice, then printed it out, folded it into thirds, placed it in the drawer beside my receipts and thread. Not for proof, just for presence. I wrote her a letter in return. No company letterhead, no title, just a single sheet of cream paper. I thanked her for choosing something that wasn't loud, for noticing what others skip past. I sealed it in a grey envelope. I didn't write a return name. The boutique's about page no longer uses phrases like, 'We at Laird Studio believe,' or 'Our mission is.' I deleted the word 'we.' I replaced every hour with this. There are no founding stories now. Just descriptions, details, measurements, clean lines. One picture of me blurry but full of air. The picture frame on my desk holds that single photo, me standing outside the first store before the ribbon was cut. My hands still had ink on them from pricing tags. My sleeves were rolled too high. I hadn't known then how easily names could be removed without a sound. A new email came from Madison. Subject: "Let's clarify things." I didn't open it. I archived it without reading. When the screen dimmed, I saw my reflection in the dark gloss my face centered. Not waiting. She once told me, "You're good at starting things, but it's better if someone else finishes them." I hadn't replied then. I didn't need to now. Eleanor's second attempt came folded into a forwarded message. "It would be smart image-wise if you made some kind of soft return. You don't have to say anything, just be visible." She used the word strategic twice and optics once. I placed her message next to the thank you note I'd written for Eliza. Two kinds of language, one emptied me out. One, let me stay whole. The boutique made 2 more sales that week. Small orders, each one handled by hand. I no longer look at metrics, just shipping weights. I measure by fingerprints left on fabric. A former vendor texted out of nowhere. "Glad to see you're still around. Didn't think you'd keep going without backing." I typed nothing back. I watched the text bubble, fade. There was a time I would have explained. It was never about backing. I made the originals. They just took the light. Now I delete the conversation thread. It doesn't belong here. I drink from a chipped white mug each morning. One Madison left in a box cracked near the base. It holds just enough to get through one email, one edit, 1 hour. Someone knocked on my door last Saturday and left without a sound. A paper bag with dried lavender tied in ribbon. No note. I didn't call to ask. The ribbon is now tied around the cactus pot. Sometimes people try to return when the picture feels off balance. But I am not a correction. I am not what fills in for symmetry. I am not a draft to be renamed. I no longer adjust my tone to fit anyone's headline. I don't wait for invitations to edit what I lived. I check the mirror now, only to see if my eyes are steady. And they are. I don't believe in clean endings, but I believe in firm ones. The cactus had grown another arm. I didn't notice at first. It leaned toward the window with no need for approval, no announcement. Just a quiet stretch, a new limb where there hadn't been one. At the lawyer's office, the receptionist offered coffee I didn't drink. I signed the forms with steady hand and dry lips. My name written once, crossed out, then written again different, but mine. J. Hartley. Your request to remove all image rights from the shared archive has been finalized, the associate told me. She paused. There's a clause in their response. Madison's rep wrote, she assumed the image belonged to both. I didn't answer. Instead, I placed the sealed letter beside the folder. No logos, no taglines, just 4 typed words, not personal, legal only. The law clerk hesitated. Do you want to include a note? I looked at her red nails. Perfect edges, not chipped like mine. No. The folded family photo wasn't hard to slip inside the envelope. There was no frame, just the glossy print and an old holiday card tucked behind it. I didn't tear it. I didn't write on it. I just placed it beneath the letter. Let someone else figure out what to do with it. At the mailbox near Mother's Street, I didn't pause. I tucked the padded envelope inside the slot labeled Dropbox only. It clicked shut, the kind of sound that doesn't echo, but still stays. No return address, no initials. The porcelain teacup I included was one from her china cabinet. It had a chip on the rim, barely noticeable unless you drank from it. She once said, "Keep it turned away. No one needs to see that part." I left it facing outward. The message card inside the package had no greeting, no closing line. Just 6 words handwritten in fine blue ink. Everything has been enough. It ends. I didn't drive to the boutique after that. I walked, wore the same shoes Madison once dismissed as museum pieces. When I reached the corner, a voice behind me called, "June!" I kept walking. "June, it's Mom!" I turned only slightly. She had that look, the one she used when she corrected waiters. "You've made this difficult for everyone," she said. Her purse strap slipped down her shoulder. She didn't fix it. "We included you in so many ways. It's not our fault you misunderstood." A truck passed between us. I waited. So did she. "I don't understand what you gain from disappearing." I looked down at the sidewalk crack running between us. "There's nothing left to gain." Her reply came sharp like clipped thread. "Then stop pretending you matter more than you do." She walked away first. I stayed until the traffic light changed, the kind of pause no one sees, but still breaks something. Back home, the manuscript waited in the drawer. I hadn't touched it in weeks. I slid it out. The pages were still curled at the corners. On the cover, I had signed the new name again lightly, just once. J. Hartley. Not a correction. Not an erasure. Just the beginning that didn't need to be explained. Eleanor had texted. Twice. Once with a group invite, once with a single sentence. "You're blowing this way out of proportion." I didn't respond. I moved the phone icon into a folder labeled Dusk. I didn't open that folder again. A local event poster had arrived in the mail, something about a community showcase floral print with bad typography. Madison's name was on the list of contributors. Mine wasn't. There was a form at the bottom. "Would you like to RSVP?" I took a pen and wrote 2 words in the margin. Not angry. Just final. No presents. At the corner of my desk stood a photograph. It wasn't a family portrait. It was me, arms crossed, standing in front of the first boutique space I ever rented. No one else in the frame. No one else had been there that day. Back when the walls were still unpainted and the shelves were bare. I moved the photo slightly forward, not out of view, just centered. Later that evening, I received an envelope from the state office. Inside confirmation. The name change was official. The new ID would follow. I folded the document neatly, placed it in the top drawer and closed it without locking. On the windowsill, the cactus stood taller. I watered it with exact measurements. No more, no less. A new email arrived, someone from a non-profit wanting to feature my designs. They had seen the boutique online. They wrote, "Your work feels like it was made by someone who understands what it's like to be forgotten." I didn't reply right away. I printed the message and placed it under a magnet shaped like a thimble. That night, I opened a new notebook. On the first page, I wrote a single sentence. Presence doesn't require permission. Then, I closed the cover and didn't read it again. The nameplate on my desk used to read J.M. Laird. I turned it over. On the blank side, I wrote with a permanent marker J. Hartley. No title, no role, no explanation. And I let it stay that way. I used to think that if I held still long enough, someone might come looking. The kettle click-yard. Not rushed, not forgotten, just enough to remind me something was ready. I poured the water into the lavender blend, the kind that left a faint trace on the rim when left too long. My grandmother kept it in a tin with a rusted edge and a paper label that had long stopped trying to stay flat. Steam rose. I didn't blow on it. The postcard was already opened. I'd read it once aloud the night before, not for anyone to hear, just to see how it sounded when words weren't about obligation. Handwritten in green ink, slightly slanted, a bit nervous. Thank you for helping me believe I could start something. You probably don't remember me. I was the one with the uneven hems and the shaky voice. I remembered her, not because of the hems, but because she looked at herself in the mirror and didn't flinch. There was a new frame on the table, wooden, unfinished, still holding a faint scent of linseed oil. Inside, a photo of the cactus by the kitchen window. One of the offshoots had bent toward the light in a crooked way that felt honest. A folded handkerchief rested beneath it. The thread was uneven where I'd stitched the words. Still here. No period. No flourish. The calendar was open to the 15th. I had drawn a quiet line beneath it. No balloons. Just a name, third thread. The boutique wasn't big. Not meant to be. But it had my signature now. The real one. The one that didn't carry anyone else's echo. I answered the knock without looking through the peephole. Madison didn't wait for permission. You've made this very difficult for everyone you know. That I walked back to the kettle. She stood. Didn't sit. Mom thinks you're being dramatic. Dad, he doesn't talk about you anymore. There was a soft clink of her ring hitting the edge of the table. Not intentional, but sharp. You could have just eased off. Instead, you went and made it public. I set down 2 cups. Hers remained untouched. The name change. That letter. That boutique. You do realize no one's going to take it seriously with that kind of branding. I cut a sliver of lemon. It slid to the bottom of my cup. Pale yellow, nearly translucent. You were always so quiet. And now suddenly you think silence makes you powerful. The cup in front of her remained full. She didn't reach for it. She walked to the bookshelf, picked up the worn edge of the bound manuscript, thumbed it once. You're rewriting your life. It's not going to stick. She left the door open behind her. I closed it without noise. The tea had cooled, but not enough to be bitter. I pulled the drawer open where the letters used to live. Some were still there, creases soft from being folded and unfolded. But I didn't open them this time, just retied the ribbon and slid them toward the back. The cushion on the window seat dipped under my weight. The cactus bent in the light. A small scratch marked the glass from where the pot once shifted too hard against it. Below, the river moved like someone humming with their mouth closed. Constant, not hurried. My phone vibrated. One message. Hope to see you at the fundraiser this weekend. Everyone's asking about you. I didn't answer. I moved the message into a folder I named Archived Noise. The boutique sign had arrived the day before. I'd traced the lettering with my thumb, like one would trace an old scar, not to mourn it, just to remember where it was. There were no flowers in the room, no candles, no music. But it wasn't silent. The needle sat in its cushion, still threaded from the night before. A dark plum color. I hadn't used that shade in years. I lifted the fabric the back of the new logo patch, half finished. A soft knock this time. The landlord. He handed over a small envelope. No return address. Just the seal of the local legal office. Inside a copy of the finalized documentation. New name, new entity. Not a merger. A beginning. He waited maybe for a signature or small talk. I won't be attending any family events, I said without raising my eyes. He nodded once and left without offering the usual, let me know if you need anything. The door clicked. I traced the corners of the certificate. Not sharp, just defined. My grandmother's thimble rested beside the manuscript. I hadn't used it in years, but I kept it near the things I made with care. Its surface dulled with the faintest indent of a fingerprint worn over time. The light shifted cut at an angle that made the floorboards look like pages flipped in wind. I didn't close the curtains. I let them move. I placed the handkerchief on the frame's base. The edge curled a little. I thought about the boxes I never unpacked, the ones marked for later. There were fewer now. Nothing in the room needed arranging. I took the last sip of tea. The lemon slice had collapsed in on itself. I folded the dish towel once, twice, laid it flat. No one was coming. And that no longer meant absence. Some things can't be reclaimed, but they don't have to follow you either.